to hear the diversity and variety of it. This is part of a project and program and research area that has been ongoing for us at the University of Liverpool over the past 20 years. We basically look into human performance modalities, and the way Eurocentrism has an impact on it ongoingly. So this particular chapter is about figure skating, and we have been following Russian figure skating particularly over the past 20 years. So you probably hear a lot of names that are Russian here, and I try to keep it a little bit more diverse, but the main core of the data and the stats has been based on their work. So I'll quickly talk about the context. I'll give you an overview of the problem we have been basic problems that we have been looking at, the history and psychology, the methodology that we have chosen and why we have done that, some of the findings that we have, and the narrative and interaction side of this, and also some future directions. So, I don't know how many people are interested in figure skating. By the show of hands, anybody here doing figure skating? I'll be happy for people who are interested. So this is an area of, this is a discipline in a sport that is prone to a higher injury rate among other types of sport that are included in the Olympics. Unfortunately, it is not included in Paralympics, and this has gone on for a very, very long time. We know that the context started in 2nd millennium BC, when there was no talk of Olympics as such. This was just an energy-saving modality for people to get from point A to point B. So basically, this has been about mobilization, making sure communities are in contact with each other, getting food, safety, and also finding the pathway to get interaction going on, specifically in cold climate. So this is originally from a Northern European perspective. What is interesting about it is that it has moved on a lot through centuries, through millennia. And there is a point in the 13th to 15th century that some developments appear in terms of the way the blades are developed, in terms of the way things have developed in terms of movement, mobility, the varieties of mobility by these means. And then in the 18th century, you will see a whole new phenomenon coming into it, which is the aesthetic side of it, the artistic side of it. And then there are aspirations for the future. So what are some of the aspirations? That we can have a more inclusive approach to ensure that people who are disabled have access to this type of sport at the elite level. Unfortunately, at the moment, this does not exist. One of the journalists who also has a hand in illustration, and also she's quite practiced and skilled in terms of figure skating. There's a lot of good illustrations for this. The main question here is, am I able to achieve anything I want? This is a question that in terms of Eurocentric approach, girls as young as 7 years old are told that they can do anything they want, and they can achieve anything they want. In terms of figure skating, that's a complex question, because girls are told that they can achieve whatever they want in figure skating, and then it becomes quite a complex problem, because at some point these girls have to retire quite early, and I'll touch on why they have to do that. But what is important is that in the Russian side of figure skating, people are told that they have to make sure they achieve a couple of medals that would set them for life financially, and then they will retire because they end up with a lot of injuries. And that's the side of this. Unfortunately, the rest of the world kind of abides by this kind of process. So we have figured out that there are two stations here. One is Olympics policy, and the other one is the pace of figure skating. Figure skating has moved in terms of pace, power, aesthetics in very different directions. Unfortunately, a lot of times girls are told that they have to make sure that their pace and their power and their jumps are all according to what men achieve. And this is some area that is quite problematic, not least because women's and men's bodies are quite different. In those terms, scientists have intervened, and they have made sure that these very, very young girls, as young as 13 to 15, they would be having access to GnRH medications, which which are basically puberty blockers. These are very, very young girls, and if you can imagine, these are not girls who want to be transitioning to become, to adopt another, remit in their life. So these are girls who are not quite well informed. They are very young. They usually come from very working class backgrounds, which means getting set up financially for life will be very important for them. And then these drugs are administered without really explaining to them what the consequences would be. And we call this the scientization of bodily performance. Unfortunately, this has really adverse effects for young girls. These drugs basically usually put their puberty to a stop, to a halt. They will have bone loss, they will have all sorts of problems with their bodies, and also in a lot of cases they will end up quite disabled for the rest of their lives, so they will not be able to do figure skating. Once they achieve a medal, they will be out of the sport arena. The other side of this problem is about normativity. Who defines norms and who defines normativity? The idea that girls have to be ice princesses, and this is taught at a very young age, so girls are quite aspirational. They'll take it on board and they think that they have to be a thin ice princess. This is a phrase that actually they use. And to achieve that, these girls have to go through competitive dieting with other girls who they compete with. That means that they will not only be losing their body mass at a very high rate, at the same time they will be given drugs to facilitate that even further. And so you can imagine how negative this impact can be on girls. The picture that you see there is Lipnitskaya and her coach, Erin, and the two of them have been working very hard so that she can achieve a gold medal. After she achieved that, she went off with disability, with eating disorder, and there was no way she could get back because the body problems she has faced have been quite significant. And so at the age of 15, she has retired for life. So the amount of financial reimbursement that a person can achieve out of this, in comparison with the loss of their independence, the loss of their aspirational sporting career, it's not really a positive way going forward. A lot of times they also talk about the choreographic sequences. They ask them to make it look like the way men perform, and again, unfortunately, this does not happen. We think about this from an aesthetic historical perspective. What was the point of the 13th century figure skating? At that time, they used to call it ice skating. If you look at the picture on your right side, the very end, that's the picture of one of the Catholic saints. One of the early images we have of figure skating or ice skating. This is showing a case of a fallen woman. It's about humility, it's about truth in terms of Christian truth. And so she's understood to be a Dutch saint, a patron of chronic pain and disabilities. If you move to the middle, that's an 18th, 19th century type aspiration. A woman should be decorative, you should be presentable, beautiful, tender. All those explanations that Edmund Burke later on basically talked about in terms of beauty and the sunlight. And then when you move to your left side, the very left side, that's Sonia Bonelli. It's a French figure skater. A very skilled woman. Unfortunately, she faced a lot of racism in terms of performing. What was very fascinating about her sport career is that she was the only, and still is to this day, the only woman, a skater, who has been able to perform a backflip landing on one blade. Unfortunately, she was told that she cannot continue doing that in the Olympics because it was basically a little bit daunting for other people to observe, which is quite fascinating. So on the one hand, we have this idea that the Eurocentric idea of the sporting, achieving medals, performing more than you should be able to, and on the other, if you do not fit the aesthetic features of a white ice princess, you will not be considered as a successful sport person. So these are some of the things that we have found that consistently happen in terms of figure skating. And if you look at the top one, the injury 4.6 per 1,000 hours of training, it's incomparable to any other sort of sport. It's quite high. About 70%, 80% people have injuries for life. If you think about single, because they are figure skating in Olympics happens in terms of singles, doubles, pairs, and synchronized. And if you add any rate of injury, you will see the rate is above 100. So it's quite a fascinating thing that although these teams know that these things will happen to these girls, they still push them to do it. And the only reason to inspire them is that you will be financially set for life. As I mentioned, until very recently, unfortunately, we haven't had anybody coming forward and making sure that we have more inclusive work on the ice rink. This girl is Stephanie Reid, and she's one of the very, very first people who is really doing a great job making sure that people have access to blades and to equipment that will support them on the ice. The figures are not always, the data that is presented in terms of disability is not always accurate. They talk about 13% of skaters experiencing issues related to disordered eating. We know from the research that we have done by systematic reviews, it's about 50%. But because there are not many stories and narratives about it, there's more coming at the moment due to social media and technological advancement, but in the past there was no such thing available. So really understanding people's accurate experiences is an issue in this sport as well. One of the other findings we have been looking at is about the feminist bystander effect. While feminism has achieved a lot in other aspects of life for women, unfortunately, it has not kept pace in sports a lot of times. One of them is in figure skating. Until very recently, 2004, I think, girls were not allowed to wear pants even. So you had to abide by an 18th century idea of beauty and sublimity. So you could not be choosing your own clothing, to say. These days it's very different, of course, but even up until a couple of years ago, I suppose it was 2019, feminists did not really intervene in terms of the age being qualified, in terms of the age that you can be qualified to go for Olympics, which was 15 back in time. And at the minute, they have brought it up to the age 17, which is still a problem, because even at that age, your body as a woman is going through some development, so you do not want to be put on puberty blockers or very harsh eating habits or diets. All of this results in societal disablement, in what we see as societal disablement, and also the feminism bystander effect helps it to become an issue of invisibility for women. Women who achieve medals, women who are very successful in their career, presumably at the start, have to retire very early in life. They have to face that very vicious cycle. They have burnout, they can't preserve their energy levels, their bodies will be affected for life due to these drugs, and in a lot of cases, unfortunately, they can't get pregnant going forward. Quite a few of these Russian skaters have faced this problem, and in recent years it has become quite a controversial issue. So this is basically about figure skating. But there are other overlaps, so it comes to our interactive kind of conversation. Overlaps in other career paths, overlaps with dancing, overlaps with any type of employment for women. The idea that feminism is about enabling, empowering women, and at the other hand, it does not achieve that in a lot of situations. It's quite fascinating. Thank you.